Tranquility du Jour, May 7th, 2018. Hello there, this is Kimberly Wilson from the Pink Palace in Washington, D.C., and I'm so delighted to be here with you today sharing the 420th edition of Tranquility du Jour. Now, today's podcast is a topic we've chatted about a bit in the past, but it's been quite a few years, like 5 to 8, I believe, since we actually chatted about Ayurveda. And we've got a wonderful guest today who is chatting about her very new book, Ayurveda Beginner's Guide, Essential Principles and Practices to Balance and Heal Naturally. So Susan Weis-Bohlen, she is, as I mentioned, the author of this book. And in this interview, we're discussing Ayurveda in everyday life, including the Dinacharya, which is the daily routine of incorporating Ayurveda. And I think you'll find a lot of really great tips and ideas on ways to incorporate this into your life on a regular basis. Also, before we hear from Susan, I wanted to share a few things that are coming up. One, and this is the first time I'm announcing it, is actually Tranquility in Tuscany is now available for sign up, and that's July 2019. So next year we'll skip Paris and instead we'll do Tuscany. So I'll be rotating those back and forth. So if you're interested in Paris, we have one spot left. So now's the time to grab it because we won't be doing it in 19. We'll be back in 2020. And so that's July 23rd through the 27th. And you can find out all sorts of information on the website, or you can email me and I'd be happy to fill you in. Also, I wanted to mention that Year of Tranquility. Last night we had our group call, and we have such an amazing group joining us for the year adventure. And this month, May, is all about minimalism. So it's this idea of how do we find a little bit more of tranquility in our everyday by becoming more mindful about the ways in which we are spending our time and our energy and our money. So a few tips that we discussed were things around inventorying your stuff. So you may have seen there's blogs and information out there of people who do an inventory of all their stuff and they try to get it down to like 100 things. And just, oftentimes books is one number. It's not like every number of books. Discarding duplicates. If you, a one in, one out rule. So when you bring something in, you get rid of something else. Or even just buying consumables, things like coffee and tea and food, things that you're actually using versus the idea of stuff. Also, this idea of being intentional with your time. So tracking your time so that you have that information and you know where it's going. Simplifying your to-do list. Simplifying your commitments. And then with money, saving and investing. Being mindful about your purchases and asking, will this thing give me value to my life now and in the future? And do I really need this? And then some other ideas were digital declutter. So cleaning up all that stuff on the desktop and beyond, unsubscribing from lists that you're no longer interested in or involved in, decluttering your mind through meditation, and of course, traveling lightly. And I talk about this in my blog post from Saturday, where I share, and I'll have a link to that in the show notes to make it easy for you. But I have a mention of everything I packed for an overnight trip whenever I flew to North Carolina last week for a training at Duke on writing for health. So I flew out Thursday morning, back Friday night, and then I have a list of everything I packed. So it's this idea of how do we do everything in a more light manner. So if you're interested in joining us for this month, you can sign up for the month, and you can find more information at KimberlyWilson.com/YOT. Also, we have a few spots left, and believe it or not, we're almost full for the June 9th, which is, oh my gosh, it's a month away, event of Yoga and the Animals at Burleigh Manor Animal Sanctuary. It's our third year to do this. You get to meet Mabel the pig, which is pretty much my highlight. I'll lead you through a yoga class, and then Tim does a vegan potluck. We have a really, really lovely group coming this year, and I would love to host you if you are interested and available. It's from 10 to 2 again on June 9th. Now, without further ado, our lovely guest, Susan Weis-Bohlen, is a full-time Ayurvedic consultant, cooking teacher, meditation teacher, and leader of sacred site tours. Her personal journey into Ayurvedic lifestyle began when she came across the Ayurvedic cleansing technique of Panchakarma. What began as a release of damaging toxins and personal difficulties eventually grew into an impassioned vocation. She has since studied with the best teachers of Ayurveda, both in the U.S. and in India, and she knows exactly how challenging it can be to come to Ayurveda as a beginner, and has dedicated her life to sharing the fruits of her studies with students all over the world. So you can learn more about Susan in the show notes. Welcome, Susan.
Hi, Kimberly. It's so great to talk to you again. It's been a couple of years.
Yeah, I was trying to think. My goodness. So my second book came out in 2010, and I remember I had just had surgery, shoulder surgery. So it must have been March or April of 2010.
That's right. Yeah, you did. You did have something on your shoulder. I remember. I forgot about that. Oh, but you carried it really well. You looked really chic.
Thank you. Yeah, I was pretty fresh out of surgery. Yeah, it's so nice to connect again.
Thank you.
And congrats on your new book.
Thank you. Now I'm up there with you almost. I have to get another one in. Yeah. It's exciting. It's kind of amazing to go to bookstore events and see like a display of my books in the window. It's like, who's that? Oh, that's me.
Right.
It's very exciting.
Well, especially because for years you've sold other people's books.
I know. So I understand the way that authors work, and especially when we go to book signings and setting up book signings. So I get that completely. But also because I worked with so many authors and events, when I have an event, I have zero expectations of how many people will be there. I realize that it can go anywhere from like 0 to 50, and you never ever know. So it's that part of having so much experience in a bookstore really helps with my expectations, with the execution of doing a book talk and setting it up. So it's a really great experience to have.
And listeners, you may not know, but Susan ran a bookstore in Baltimore for how long?
I had it for 10 years. It was called Breathe Books, like Eat, Sleep, and Breathe Books. 10 years from 2004 to 2014. And, it was amazing. It was incredible. I had a beautiful experience. I also opened a vegetarian cafe, an Ayurvedic cafe, really, a couple of years before I closed. I met my husband in my bookstore. I met my first dog in my bookstore. It brought me incredible gifts. But Ayurveda began for me while I had my bookshop. And after a while, knowing myself as I began to learn myself better through Ayurveda, I realized when I was done. And so after 10 years, I woke up one morning and I was like, done. Time to move on, and created a plan for how I was going to move on, and just really wanting to concentrate on Ayurveda for my business and my livelihood and my happiness. So that's why I closed December 31st, 2014.
Wow. And how has the transition been? Because, having just sold my yoga studios, I know that transitioning out of something that's been a big part of you for a while, takes some adjustment.
Well, so it's been 3 years, and it was very strange. The first year, I just felt like I was really in recovery. It was hard. It was really hard for 10 years to run my own business, especially books. I opened in 2004 when things were still really good for books, but I watched it go down and down and down. And it's still possible to have an independent bookstore, and I was a niche store doing new age type of books, yoga, meditation, and so on. We still had decent sales, but the future of book selling is just changing. And so there was a lot of stress in figuring out the best ways to bring in cash and revenue. And that was one of the reasons why I opened a cafe. And the cafe became so popular that instead of a bookstore with a cafe, I really felt that was a cafe with a couple of books, and that wasn't really what I signed up for when I opened a bookstore. And the cafe was extremely stressful. I will never, ever, ever run a restaurant, ever.
Right.
It is so hard. I don't know how anyone does it. I don't know. I have no clue. So that's one thing I can check off my list that I know I'll never do again, is have a restaurant, especially trying to do like all organic, vegetarian, vegan options, nothing processed, no sugar, flour. I mean, it was an incredible place and the food was amazing, but the stress level and staffing and it was hard. So that transition was just like, it was a relief. It was a real relief to close it. And I counted every single blessing from it. It was beautiful. And it's wonderful to be an entrepreneur and have a business that sustains you and so on. But it's good to move on. So I sort of got my head together for a year about what I wanted to do. And then I'm just feeling, very energized and able to move on from that experience and just keep creating new things.
Yes.
I have a lot more freedom. Lot more freedom now.
Yes. Just so nice.
Yeah.
So how did you get involved in Ayurveda? Was it, I picked up a book in my bookstore and the rest is history?
When I think about it, I did pick up a book, but it wasn't in my bookstore. It was in the early 90s in Washington, D.C., in Crown Books, if you remember Crown Books.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, way back. Yeah, another independent. And I remember they had little benches, and I found a book that, I don't know, it just called to me on this shelf. It was called Ageless Body, Timeless Mind by Deepak Chopra. And I think it was 1991 or 92, and the book had just come out. And I sat down and I started reading it, and I was mesmerized. I had no idea what he was talking about. But I was already a meditator and did yoga. So I had, he used these words that I knew from meditation and yoga, but Ayurveda was something I'd never heard of. So I bought that book, and then I bought a lot of Deepak Chopra books, and I really concentrated, though, on yoga and meditation. That's something I had started in my mid-20s, and that really sustained me through a lot of things in the 80s and 90s. And but when I did open my bookstore, I did have an Ayurvedic section in it, and I knew a little bit more about it. But it was, I just felt I needed some kind of deep cleanse. And this was in, 2006, 2007. And I really didn't know what to do. And so I heard from other people some things about cleanses through Ayurveda. And I thought, I'll go to India. It's kind of like me. I'm like, I hear about something, I have to go to the source. I must go to India. It's Indian medicine. And then someone said, it'll probably be easier to just go to the Chopra Center in California rather than go to India. And I was like, maybe I'll try it there first. So that's what I did. I read just a little bit about it, but then I just decided that I would go to the Chopra Center and just have this experience. For years, I had done silent meditation retreats. So I looked at it like another retreat, but more for my body as well as my mind. And then that week there at the Chopra Center, which was in August 2007, just completely changed my life. And that was my introduction to Ayurveda.
Amazing. I know people who, start studying it seems like they get really, really into it. And, so the thing about Ayurveda, right, it's sister science of yoga, 5,000-year-old system. So I'm curious how you have found to make it relevant to you and your clients today.
Right, yeah. So Ayurveda is the Indian system of medicine. As you said, 5,000 years old. It's like Chinese medicine, but from India. It uses the indigenous herbs and foods and spices and so on that come from India for healing. It's the first system of medicine ever created. And so you would think that something that's 5,000 years old, the first system of medicine, like Chinese medicine, people would say, well, they must really know what they're doing. Let's do that for whenever something is wrong. But somewhere along the way, people began to think that newer was better and that Western medicine has better ideas than Eastern medicine and ancient types of medicine. And what I found was for myself that Western medicine didn't have all the answers. I think a lot of people find that. I'm a big complementary medicine person. I totally believe that if you have some sort of injury or an axe in your head, or you need to go to the hospital, not take Ayurvedic herbs, So there's a balance there. But what I found in Ayurveda is that the ancient knowledge went so deep into specific personalities, body types, emotions, feelings, so on, of each individual unique being, and there's no difference today than there was 5 to 10,000 years ago in people. We're still people with the same worries, stress, emotions, the same. Ayurveda came up with these really natural ways to help you balance and heal more in alignment with the elements, whereas Western medicine sort of takes you out of the elements and it treats the symptom rather than the root cause. And Ayurveda goes deep, deep down into the root cause, emotionally as well as physically. And to me, what could be more relevant? We live in sort of in many ways, a beautiful society and a beautiful world, but in other ways, it can be very scary and stressful and unpredictable. And we all react differently to those stressors in our lives. And so Ayurveda can come at it with a very individualized plan for each person to help them deal with whatever arises. So we do find, just great relevancy in helping to heal people today based on ancient wisdom. I mean, if you have something that's 5,000 years old that has that much knowledge behind it, I don't see why you wouldn't try that, perhaps in conjunction with Western medicine, but why not look to that even first and see if that would work for you?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You're like, if it's been around this long, then, there's probably something to it. And, what I love about Ayurveda is the ways in which we can incorporate it in our everyday, right? From like our diet to the temperature of beverages we drink to the oils. So can you talk a little bit about how you encourage people to adopt these practices in their everyday life?
Yeah, so what's really important to know, though, is when, and we'll probably talk about how a consultation works as well, but when somebody comes in, it's really important to understand their lifestyle and how much they can fit in and how much they're willing to change. You don't want to say to somebody, throw everything out in your kitchen and start all over again, because they'll probably, walk out the door and say, I'm never going to do that. So we have to just be aware of the person's lifestyle. And then we can just sort of take baby steps. So like for my lifestyle, because I've been doing this for 10 years and I had such enormous success with Ayurveda in the beginning. Personally, I lost about 60 pounds and I lost 80 points on my cholesterol, and my life just changed in just enormous ways. I just got rid of a lot of stagnation in my life because Ayurveda helped me clear up things. And so I saw how beautifully that worked, and that encouraged me to make this a regular part of my day. And I saw that if there were obstacles in the way, I wasn't going to do it. So I did, like, for instance, in the morning, there are certain things we do every morning. Our daily routine is called Dinacharya in Sanskrit. Sanskrit is the language of Ayurveda. So in the Dinacharya, you want to do things that help get rid of the toxins that built up overnight in your body. So the first thing you do in the morning is you scrape your tongue, you brush your teeth, perhaps use your neti pot, maybe do some oil pulling where you hold oil in your mouth to help release more of the bacteria that has come out on your tongue and cheeks and gums through the night. It's antibacterial as well. Then we want to drink some hot water with lemon or lime, depending on your Ayurvedic constitution. And so what I found was that I needed a whole lot of hot water in the morning. This includes also, let's say, body oiling, where you want to put your body of oil into some hot water to warm it up. And so there was hot water I needed for the neti pot, hot water to drink, hot water to put my oil in. It was just like endless hot water. And I wasn't going to go back and forth to my kitchen and boil water and do this and that and the other. I was finding that was a real detriment to my practice. So, and this is a little step that really helps me and helps so many of my clients, as I got an electric kettle. and I put it in my bathroom. And I made like a little Ayurvedic bench in my bathroom. So I have my electric kettle, I have my neti pot, I have different herbs and things that I might make concoctions of in the morning, and different salts and oils and so on that I use. And so the first thing I do in the morning is I just turn my kettle on. I even fill it up the night before. So like no obstacles, you know, you got to get moving. So I just put that on, and then I can do so many things so quickly because I have it right at my fingertips. And so that little trick right there of having an electric kettle can save somebody so much time and encourage them to do their morning routine, which is perhaps the most important routine in Ayurveda, is ridding yourself of toxins and getting your body ready to face the environmental toxins that we're going to encounter during the day. So that's just like one little way that can help people to set up an Ayurvedic practice.
And how has Ayurveda personally changed your life? Like, what have you noticed over the years since adopting the practices?
Well, I started practicing Ayurveda when I was 44, or 44, 45. I think I just turned 45 maybe. And I'll be 55 this year in May. And so, geez, I still can't believe it, but I lost so much weight, and I'd never been able to lose that weight before and keep it off. Like, that's like one of the biggest struggles that people have in life who are overweight, is keeping it off. So I've kept my weight off for 10 years. So sometimes, like, when I'm walking in the street and there's like a shadow of me, I'm like, who's that? Like, I still don't recognize that girl without the big hips anymore. But Ayurveda, it's not just about weight loss, obviously, but for me, that was a big deal. I felt much healthier when I was able to get the weight off, because I was able to do yoga better, actually able to sit in meditation longer, be more comfortable, and just move about life more easily that way. It also changes you emotionally when you go from being, really heavy to being a more normal weight. You shift emotionally, and you get to know yourself a lot better, because you're no longer just concerned about your weight and your body image anymore. That's like something that's not on my mind anymore. And so I've been able to dig deeper into my own personal issues, and Ayurveda has given me a way to do that that's very healthy and can help me, shed things that no longer serve me and bring things into my life that are really positive. So I feel just super healthy, and I know how to repair myself when things go off the rails. Ayurveda gives us so many remedies to work with, from just allergies and colds to sore muscles, aches and pains, to more serious things. Like recently I travel a lot. I take people on trips overseas. I go to India a lot, or Bhutan, and I had a parasite or something going on in my system that really messed me up, and I wasn't able to fix myself. I threw every Ayurvedic thing at it I knew how. I still couldn't fix myself. So I went to an Ayurvedic practitioner in New Jersey. His name is Dr. Marianne Teitelbaum. She's amazing. And she was able to really get me back on track with good gut health and help repair a lot of things. It's an ongoing process right now. And so I knew that Ayurveda had the answer. It wasn't antibiotics or, other things that you could do, colon cleanses. I don't know what crazy stuff people do. But she was able to use Ayurveda at a much deeper level to help me get back on track. So I know that there are people out there who can help repair what I'm not able to repair myself. And I think so. And Ayurveda has helped give me answers to the questions of like, oh my God, what do I eat? I think that's something that so many people struggle with. What am I going to eat today? Well, Ayurveda tells us exactly what to eat for our own mind-body type. And the mind-body type that I'm talking about, the word is called dosha. We have 3 different doshas, sort of an airy, spacey type called vata, a more fiery type called pitta, and a grounded, more earthy type of person called kapha. And so Ayurveda prescribes different types of foods for each of these doshas in order to balance it out. So for instance, I'm going through menopause right now, And so I have a lot of pitta moments, a lot of fiery, heated moments. And so I know what type of cooling foods to turn to help me mitigate the symptoms of menopause. So that's just one example. But as we get to know ourselves better, we can better understand the types of foods, herbs, spices, even the type of yoga to practice or the type of breath work. Pranayama is very important to help keep us balanced. So Ayurveda has given me answers to just about everything. And if I can't find it, there are all these other people out there that know. So I know I can rely on Ayurveda to help heal whatever comes up.
Well, I mean, that's a very good endorsement, let me just say, for Ayurveda.
And that's a lot of information at one time.
But it's good. It's good. You know, I've had a few guests on the podcast over the past, I've been doing this, I guess, 12 years. And the Ayurveda ones, people are always, they find very interesting. So I think there's just so much depth to it. So thank you for, sharing your insights. And I'm curious, with your book, Ayurveda Beginner's Guide, Essential Principles and Practices to Balance and Heal Naturally. So how did that come about, and how was the writing process for you?
Oh, it was so hard, but it was so awesome. It's funny, I say my story was hard, writing's hard. Sometimes things are just hard, but they're so worth it. It's really good to put effort sometimes into things that you really care about and make your heart sing. But what happened, in the back of my mind, I always, wanted to write a book, or people said to me, you should write a book. And I didn't have a clue how to sit down and create, how do I start? Where do I get an agent? Who's going to be my editor? What's the outline? What's it going to look like? I was so overwhelmed by all of that I just put it on a back burner. But then one day, out of the blue, last spring, I got a phone call, or an email, I should say. We don't get phone calls anymore, do we? I got an email from a company called Costa Media in California. And they said, we are looking for an expert on Ayurveda to write a book, and they put out all these details, and I thought it was a scam. It's like, they're trying to scam me, and they're going to want me to put up money or something. But then I looked them up, and I was like, wow, they have published so many amazing books, a lot on health and wellness, and right up my alley. So I answered the email, and then I did speak with the person there, and they were just incredible. They were like, this is how it works. And this is like a new way of publishing that I didn't even know about when I had my bookstore. But this is so interesting that maybe your listeners, will look into companies like this. But they're a Silicon Valley media company, Costa Media, in Burleigh. And they find what's trending on the bestseller list. They look for, hot words and things that are out there that people are searching for. And Ayurveda is a really big deal that people are searching for. And so then they go out and they look at videos and online and so on for people that they think would be a good voice for that topic. And I was just really excited because I do have a lot online videos and so on. And because they want the personal story. They didn't just want like a dry textbook. They wanted a real personal story. And in my opinion, I think they really wanted a Western person to write about Ayurveda, because you have a lot of wonderful Ayurvedic books written by Indians, but sometimes it's really hard to relate when you're just, like for instance, me, I'm just like this Jewish girl from a Jewish part of town in Baltimore. And it's like, how in the world did I get involved in this Indian science? And so it's really neat to see how anybody from any background could get involved in this type of thing. And so they hired me. They paid me a flat fee, which is also very interesting. You get a contract and a flat fee. And then I got assigned an editor to start working with. And they were just super responsive to the way that I wanted to tell my story. And they just guided me along. And then they designed an absolutely gorgeous book. It is so beautiful. I can't even believe it's mine when I look at it. And so it was a quick writing process. It was about 4 months, a really concentrated effort of research, of going through everything that I've ever learned, trying to discover what people wanted to learn. I felt like I sat down at my computer sometimes I would just have to just turn my brain off and completely channel like some Indian Vedic scholar in my head and find that voice and let it just come forth on the page. And it was an incredible process. And like some days were really hard, but other days it was like magic. I don't even know how half of it happened. It's almost like a blur. So I encourage anybody who wants to write a book. It's not self-publishing. They're a publisher. So they get it to all the distributors. They put it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all the bookstores. You can buy books from them and sell them yourself. So it's a fascinating way to distribute information out there. And so that's how my book came about. And it's currently #1 new release on Amazon and Ayurveda. So that's pretty exciting.
That's super exciting. Congratulations.
I know it's hard to believe, but this company knows what they're doing. They know how to market it. But I did send it out for endorsements from all of my teachers and scholars around the world. And I was so scared. I was so scared when I sent it out because I thought, what if I messed it up? What if it's totally wrong? But the endorsements I got back were amazing. And I remember when they started to come in, I said to my husband, I was like, oh, phew, I did okay. I really did okay. And it was a real relief to know that I didn't mess it up. So it feels good that it's out there. I'm getting wonderful feedback from all over the country and people really starting to do things and make changes, changing their kitchen, changing the food they eat. The book includes recipes. It includes yoga for your dosha. So it's really interesting how there's different yogic poses to help balance you, as well as the whole history of Ayurveda, attributes and so on, seasonal changes and adjustments and cleanses. It is just like it says, it's a beginner's guide, but giving you lots and lots of tools and techniques to help you create a more Ayurvedic home and body and mind.
I love it. And you were just recently here in DC at Politics and Prose, right?
Yeah, was that a dream come true? That was like unbelievable to be a Politics and Prose. So I was, and we had a great audience, and including, it was so funny, 2 Indian women came rushing in, just after I started, and they told me later that they'd been at a dinner party. It was a Friday night book talk. They'd been at a dinner party, but they said, we have to go hear about Ayurveda. And it was wonderful because a lot of Indians sort of grow up with that in the background, like their grandmother made them khichdi or golden milk or something when they felt sick, but they don't really know the basis of it all. And so they were just really excited to be there. And it was a great group, yoga people, regular folks. It was just, that was a lot of fun. It was really fun to be in Washington.
And, I'm curious, what do you find, because you mentioned yoga poses like that are helpful for balancing doshas. Like, what have you found the connection of yoga to be with Ayurveda? Like, do you feel like they're fairly intertwined?
Oh, completely. They're, in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which include yoga meditation and Ayurvedic practices as well. The sutras, if Patanjali was one person, I'm not sure. Sometimes people think it might have been a few people that wrote it down, but they really notice that people react differently to different poses. So let's say somebody has a lot of fear in their life, a lot of anxiety and worry. So there are particular poses, let's say child's pose, for example, that can really help a person sort of cultivate that sense of comfort and ease and groundedness and warmth, which is what they need. Or same with Shavasana, covered up Shavasana with a blanket, is something that a person with a lot of fear, worry, and anxiety can really help to calm them down. A person who's more earthy and grounded, the kapha type of person, might need to move a little bit more, do poses with faster movements in between, watching their breath work, building up a sweat, things to help the blood get flowing, like doing several sun salutations in a row without pausing. That's really good for a kapha person. and a person who has a lot of fire to do more slow, controlled opening movements, sort of like chest openers or triangle pose, things that really open you up wide, but you have to watch your alignment and hold it. Those are really good for cooling down and opening up. So there are every yoga pose can be modified for your dosha, but there are specific ones like I just described that can be really comforting for each person.
And my last question for you, Susan, is the name of this podcast is Tranquility du Jour, right? So I'm curious, how do you find tranquility in your everyday? I think particularly those days that aren't quite so tranquil.
Oh, well, you know what? I always talk about, with my clients, I talk about vitamin H. And vitamin H is vitamin happy. I always see them writing it down, vitamin H, like they're going to look up, like to buy vitamin H. But it just means vitamin happy. And, you know, the other day, I have 3 dogs. Their names are Ella, Shadow, and Junie. I have a husband, too, named Larry. my dogs. One's a rescue from West Virginia. One is a rescue I brought home from India, actually. Junie came from India, and Shadow was my husband's family's dog. So I say I rescued her from my husband's family. They're awesome, but I just took her like I took my husband. So I have my 3 dogs, and I was outside playing with them the other day, and I said, "You're my vitamin H." I have like 3 vitamin H's. We can give 4 vitamin H's, one to my husband. But I have to say, being out in nature, especially with my dogs, is so tranquil. Watching what they watch, trying to figure out what are they sniffing, what are they so intent upon, like to get to. They're just these little beings that are so in the moment and so happy and joyful, and like they never get resentful or mean or sullen, or they're just these wonderful, amazing bundles of joy. And when I channel myself into them, everything changes. And that's where I become really tranquil and calm and just so happy to be with these little doggies. It's just all animals are just incredible teachers. If we see what they see, notice what they notice, I think we can all just become more elemental, based in nature, connected to, the universe, to space, air, fire, water, and the earth, by being more with things that are closer to the earth. Right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm watching this red robin outside my window, just foraging around for food, and that is so calming. So I think just watching anything that takes us outside of ourselves but grounds us at the same time can be very tranquil.
Absolutely. It's so beautifully said. And as you're watching the bird outside, I'm petting my snoring dog. So my apologies if you hear that in the background.
Aw, that makes me happy. Nothing makes me happier than at night to I hear 4 beings snoring, my husband and the 3 dogs. And I lay there for a little while and I think, what could be better? And then I put my earplugs in so I can go to sleep.
Exactly.
But for a minute, it's like, there's nothing better than this.
I love it.
It's really sweet. Yeah.
Well, Susan, it's so great to connect with you again. And again, big congratulations on this new book. So excited for you.
Thank you, Kimberly. It's so wonderful to reconnect with you, and I'm going to go back and listen to some of your podcasts. I remember listening when I had the bookshop. You've been doing this for so long. It's really great. It's really wonderful.
Well, it's a treat to have you on.
Well, thank you. I just so appreciate being your guest.
Savvy sources. So you can find Susan at breathebooks.com. Also, there's a video I included in the show notes, her Facebook, and, of course, her brand new book that I mentioned earlier, which is Ayurveda Beginner's Guide, which is exactly, I think it's so wonderful because honestly, even if you know a lot about Ayurveda, there's always something that can be really great. I always enjoyed reading beginner yoga books because it's like you never, ever know everything. There's so much to learn. So there's a link to all of this in the show notes. Also, there's a link to the blog post that I mentioned of traveling lightly and what I toted on my overnight trip. Also, there's a link to Year of Tranquility and the focus of May being minimalism. Soon, just so you know, we're going to have available so you can buy Year of Tranquility a la carte. So previous ones that have already happened, you can purchase them. So January was dreams, February was love, March was style and beauty, last month, April was creativity, and now May is minimalism. June, by the way, is wellness. So you can find out more information at Year of Tranquility, KimberlyWilson.com/Year of Tranquility or YOT. And the thing is, you can sign up to be part of it live, or you can buy it a la carte in hindsight. So the only piece about that is you won't have access to the forum or, the ability to connect with people live or join live calls, but you'll get all the recordings and whatnot. So anyway, that will be available shortly. Also in the show notes, there's a link to the Compassion is the New Black Tea. We have about 5 left. I probably will be printing more, but if you would like one, you can grab one over at tranquility.com, or in the show notes, there's a link to it. And they're so cute, and they come with a little Pigs and Pugs reusable tote. Also, find me on Instagram. That's kind of really the main way I'm expressing myself these days. I'm kind of obsessed with photos of spring flowers these days, which you'll find over on Instagram at Tranquility du Jour. I'm on Pinterest, which I dabble in from time to time, on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And of course, there is a link in the show notes to Tranquility, my 5 books. If you're new to Tranquility du Jour, peruse the FAQs. And if you have any additional questions that aren't answered there, let me know. One fun thing that's even in there is if you're coming to DC and you're like, what should I check out? Or you're going to Paris, I have a list of my favorite things and places. There's also a link to Tranquility du Jour e-courses, the iPhone and Android app. If you are not signed up for Love Notes, I plan to get one out this week, and there's an updated version of Tranquil Treasures, which has all sorts of fun ideas really on how to find tranquility in every day. So there's like a style PDF, there is a yoga video that I've added, new manifestos, things along those lines. Take a peek, and you can get access to that whenever you sign up for Love Notes. Of course, read about my passion for animals, obsessed, particularly pigs and pugs. And finally, just one quick request. If you have a moment to pen a review of this podcast on iTunes or share it via social media, I would be most grateful. Or if you have a moment to pen a review of any of my books on Amazon or Goodreads, again, would be most grateful. So we've been doing this podcast now, if you can believe it, for, oh my gosh, so I always have to do the math, since 15, so we are in our 13th year of Tranquility du Jour. So I really appreciate your support and for listening along, and I wish you a wonderful, phenomenal, delightful week ahead. Thanks for listening. Namaste.